the Azure. So these questions would include a lot of questions from ASR, Azure Migrate, DMA, from the migration topics. So hello everyone, my name is Arun and let's get started. So in this part 8, my first question is my version of the mobility service agent or configuration server is old and my upgrade failed. What do I do? Well, just try concentrate on this part. Mobility service agent or configuration server is old. Okay, that means you face this issue when you are doing the actual migration. You will rarely find this issue if you are doing a demonstration, testing, or POC. This issue usually comes when the migration period is too long, like a month, 2 months, or 4 months of migration. Okay, during that period long, only Microsoft releases the updates and all. If you're doing a demonstration, you would not get this option or issue to update your mobility service agent. Okay, so this question specifically asks to know whether you have actually done the migration or you are just coming here after watching few videos or after reading the documentation. Okay, I faced this issue and the answer is it is on the portal. Update can be seen in the portal and applied from there. Reboot is not required, but it is recommended. However, you can proceed just updating it from the portal and you can proceed. I have done that so many times, but I have never encountered any issue. However, as per the documentation, the reboot is recommended always in the Windows cases, right? We all know that. Now, what does configuration server do? We have already talked about config server, process server, mobility agent, and all the components of ASR. So I'm not going into the depth of that architecture. It has already been discussed, and I have already created the video about it. So to answer this question, it is absolutely simple. The config server, coordinates communication between on-premises components and Azure and manages the data replication. Okay. Similarly, next question is what is process server? Well, if you remember my architecture, config server and process server was there on the same VM. It is usually when we deploy first time, but you can deploy the process server separately if it is required or needed as per your infrastructure. So let's come to the point. What is process server? Process server acts as a replication gateway, receives replication data from all the VMs through mobility services, optimize the data with caching, compression, and encryption. Okay, sends the data to Azure storage. The process server also does a push install of the mobility service on VMs and performs automatic discovery of on-premises VMware VMs. So there are so many things that process server do, as the name says, process. It will take care of the replication data process. It will take care of the caching, compression, and encryption process. It will deploy the mobility service to get the data from the VMs. Okay. All right. So tell few prereq of the config server. Well, if you remember, when we deployed the config server in our demonstration, there were so many checks going on. Okay, and I remember we failed few checks and we fixed and rerun the prereq check, and only then we could go ahead. So in this question, the interviewer only wants to know whether you have deployed the config server ever or you have not. The actual experience of deploying config server in the environment. There are few prereq that I remember right now is the free disk of 600 GB. If you don't want the failback, then single 600 GB disk will work. If you need minimum, if you need failback, then you need 2 disks. Okay. The IP should be static. The port 443 and 9443 is required. Internet access is required. If not allowed, then there are a number of URLs from the MS side that you need to open. Okay. 16 GB of RAM and 8 CPUs, and the operating system is 2012 R2 and 2016. Those are the few prerequisites. If you talk about these prerequisites, the interviewer will know that you have deployed the config server and you know what you're talking about. Okay, let's go to the question number 5. Can a config server replicate to more than one region? Well, its simple answer is no, because to replicate to more than one region, you need separate server in each region, right? Because if you go back to configure the ASR, you know how we configure. We create the recovery service vault in a particular subscription, and your data sent to that uh, storage account that is created, and metadata to the recovery service vault. Or let's go a step back. When we install the config server, process server, it gets registered to the recovery vault, and that recovery vault belongs to a particular region. That's why. Okay, so this question is the conceptual question. If you have not done that with this concept, you can figure it out. That's not possible. Where can I download the passphrase for config server? That's our next question. Okay, where can I download the passphrase for config server? First of all, if you remember, I told you passphrase is required when we install mobility agent manually for us. Okay, when we install the mobility service manually, at the end of this step, we need to register it with the config server, where we need the IP address of the configuration server and the passphrase. If you have not noted down the passphrase during the configuration setup, then you need to generate it. Okay, or if you have deployed the OVF template, even in that scenario, you have to generate it. So to generate the passphrase, you need to go to a particular location from where, on your command prompt, from where you can do passphrase.exe and get the output inside the notepad. Okay, cool. All right, now next question is, where can I download the vault registration keys? Wow. These questions are really interesting and important if you know what I mean, because this situation you only faces when you actually do the migration. You would not encounter, or you will not even think about these scenarios when you go through the demonstration or POCs. Okay, so where can you download the vault registration keys? Well, that can be downloaded from the Azure portal. You need to go to the config server inside the site recovery infrastructure, go to the manage, then the servers, and then select the download registration key. Okay, it is there. You can download it from there. And this is the same place from where you can refresh your config server as well. You need not to log into the config server which you have deployed on premises. You can refresh it. I mean to say, relevant services will get restarted. A lot of things that you can manage from the Azure portal. Okay, now what access to VMware VMs does Azure Site Recovery needs? Okay, access questions are always, uh, make me a little crazy, but important. Okay, all right, let's go to the process step by step. To replicate, a VMware must have the site recovery mobility service installed. Okay, installed and registered. So I talked in the previous questions, so we need the passphrase to register it. Okay, now VM communicates with the config server on HTTPS port 443 for replication management. So port needed to be open. VM sends the replication data to the process server on 9443. That should be open. That can be modified, but usually we take the default. If you enable the multi-VM consistency, VM communicate with each other over port 2004. Okay, so these are few accesses that site recovery needs from the VMware VMs. All right, let's go to another question. Is the replication data sent to site recovery? Well, no. No, that's why. If you remember when I was explaining the region answer for the recovery vault, I said few things technically because data is not sent to the site recovery. It's only the metadata. Actual data sent to the storage account. So to answer this question, it would be like, no, site recovery doesn't intercept replicated data and doesn't have any information about what's running on your VMs. It is also because ASR doesn't only belong to the migration to Azure, but you can use it to migration it to different platforms as well. Okay, so replication data is exchanged between VMware hypervisor and Azure storage. Site recovery has no ability to intercept that data. Only the metadata needed to orchestrate replication and failover is sent to the site recovery services. Okay. All right. Question number 10. Where can I find the mobility service installer? Again, as these some questions which is regarding to the actual experience of the migration, this question falls to the same category because if you have deployed the OBF template in the vCenter, a lot of things has already been done. This situation you have already only faced when you have done the actual migration and your replication gets failed because mobility service couldn't be installed. So you have to do it manually. There could be n number of reasons. So for now, you need to find out the installer. And install is always under the your ASR home systems. There's a push install folder, and under that there would be repository folder. From there you can get the installer. Okay, on the configuration server. Where do I set up the configuration server? Well, to answer this question, we set up this on the on-premises. It's not get set up on the Azure, of course. Azure is your target. It's always on the source side, and you need a single highly available VM, maybe a VM on the VMware for the configuration server. For physical server disaster recovery, install the config server on a physical machine. Now, the last question is, can I use the config server VM for anything else? Well, no. Do not use it for anything else. It is just for the ASR to establish the DR or to do the migrations. Well, these are my 12 questions regarding the migrations ASR, and I hope you learned something new today, and thank you for watching. You have a good day. I'll share the link of my blog so that you would have the hold of these questions. Bye-bye.